This movie started with a guy named Ron Stallworth who is an African-American guy that wants to be a police officer. So he went to the police department in Colorado to be an officer. Then he was interviewed. Actually, it's very strange there is a black guy who wants to be a policeman because in the 1970s in America, racism was highly increasing and there was no black police in Colorado. Normally, the black guys are criminals. But Ron is different. From the interview, Chief Bridge finally accepted Ron as policeman. Long story short, Ron was assigned in the file room. His duty is taking the file that is asked by the officer. Most of the files are about the black criminals. Ron couldn't stand with the officers in the room because they are too racist. Instead of telling the file name, they often say this black people or that black people. Surely, as the time goes by, Ron couldn't stand that kind of treatment. That is why he went to Sergeant Trapp and Chief Bridge to ask them to transfer him as intelligence police. Surely his request was considered too fast as he is a newbie policeman. They still asked Ron to work in the file room. But the next morning, Ron got a call. Chief Bridge changed his mind and he agreed to put Ron in the drugs division. Then he was asked to come to the office in casual clothes. When he got to the office, the chief already gave him duty. The duty is to come to the speech event of a guy named Michael, or more well known as Quaimtor. Ron was asked to mingle there to monitor the audience's reaction to the speech content. Chief doesn't want radical speech to brainwash good black citizens in Colorado. Then Flip and Jimmy put a microphone on Ron's body for this duty. Because when he gets there, Flip and Jimmy will monitor it inside a car. Afterwards, Ron tried to mingle and talk directly with a woman named Patrice. She is the student president of Colorado University, which is the person behind the event. Long story short, the event just started. Quaimtor was summoned to the stage. He is a human rights fighter for black people. On the stage, he asked everyone who attended the event to not run from their fate as black people. This time, no need to be ashamed to stand as a man with thick lips, big nose and frizzy hair because they are perfect as they are. Quaimtor tried to bring the black spirit, which is unity, to form the basis for the fight against racism. No more feelings of anxiety and imprisonment, no longer feel oppressed when living in this society, no more oppression without proper recompense. Quaimtor also criticized the Vietnam War that the US president did. He asked all black people who attended to not support the war. Enough of their people slaughtered like dogs in the streets, no need for them to be sent to die on the battlefield. Quaimtor's direct speech was successful in inspiring and burning the spirits of the audience. After the event, Ron tried to ask Patrice to drink. Then Patrice agreed to follow after she made sure Quaimtor's safety until he got into the hotel. After that, when Patrice and her party were on the way, they were stopped by the policeman without any reason. The policeman provoked them by purpose to give a lesson for them, the black activists. Even, Patrice was sexually abused. Fortunately, no casualties in the incident. After that, Patrice was heading to the bar to meet Ron. To cheer Patrice up, which is already bullied by the policeman, Ron directly asked Patrice to dance. The next day, the three of them reported to Chief Bridge. They made sure that in their opinion, no revolution that may happen, no calls for interracial war and so on, let alone want to crush the police. Ron considered that it was just rhetoric. Because of his good work, the chief moved Ron to the intelligent division from that day. When Ron read information about the Ku Klux Klan on the newspaper, he casually dialed the number listed and he was answered by an answering machine. Ron said that he was interested to get to know more about the Ku Klux Klan, so that he asked to be called back. No need for a long time, the telephone already rang. At that time, Ron talked to Walter from the organization. Then Ron told him that he hated Jewish and Negro. Ron badmouthed them very convincingly so that it caught the attention of the people in the room. Listening to Ron's story interests Walter, because that's what the organization was made for. Then Walter planned to meet up with Ron on Friday night. Ron was thinking that he was smart, but he used his fake name stupidly. So he forgot that as an intel, he should have faked his identity. Accompanied by Sergeant Trapp, Ron reported to Chief Bridge that he wanted to do this investigation. That is why he needs one white officer to be himself. Because, if he comes, it means he looks for his own death. Then the chief said if anything happened to the officer, then Ron would be fired. For this duty, Ron still got Flip and also Jimmy as his co-workers. They practiced to make the latest profile of Ron Stallworth. Flip will be Ron that will meet people in the organization, while the real Ron will handle them by phone. So, there will be two Ron Stallworths on this mission. Because of it, they also had to practice to have the same accent so that the Ron on the phone and the Ron on the site don't sound like different people. Long story short, Flip, who acted as Ron, met with a guy on Friday night as the deal. But the guy is not Walter, but Felix. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Ron stalked from the car across the street. For security, Flip was asked to get into Felix's car and they were heading to a place. That place is a bar where Flip met Walter and another member named Ivan. They frankly said that they hated black people so much for a long time. They also hate activists like Martin Luther King Jr. After the brief introduction, Flip was asked to fill the membership form. Unlike Walter, Felix strongly suspected Flip. He suspected that Flip was an undercover cop and is a Jewish, but Flip managed to play his role very well. The next day, Ron and Flip reported it. In short, Flip still didn't know what they could do. It sounds like bragging, wanting to do attacks and explosions. But in Flip's opinion, he is still unsure of the organization's capability. Afterwards, Sergeant Trapp decided to ask them to continue this investigation. One day, Ron got a call from Walter. Ron was asked to meet with other members in Felix's house. So they rearranged plans for the next meeting. Long story short, Flip came again to meet Walter's invitation as Ron while the real Ron was waiting in the car to stalk. Flip was greeted by Felix's wife named Connie and the organization members. They discussed about the white supremacy, even discussed Quamacher's speech activity that was held by Patrice. On that occasion, Felix asked Flip to go to the basement. When they were there, Felix asked Flip again whether he was a Jewish or not. Eventually, Walter has prevented Felix because these things cause them to lose members. Yet Felix still insisted. He even asked Flip to do a lie detector test. Then they argued. Fortunately, Flip could still be calm enough to handle the insane Felix. Ron, who was listening to the conversation in the car, thought this condition could expose Flip's camouflage. Ron recklessly decided to do the improvisation by throwing something at the window of Felix's house. Hearing the scream upstairs, Felix and Flip immediately ran upstairs and Flip shot Ron's car. Luckily, Ron could run away at the right time. Listening to the report from the two of them made Sergeant Trapp angry. The earlier incident surely made him worry, because if this operation messed up, then their career would be messed up too. Afterwards, Ron and Flip talked privately in the file room. Flip doesn't want to continue this operation because Felix pointed a gun right in front of his eyes. Furthermore, the risk that he faced is nothing compared to digging up the information from people who Flip considers only amateurs who want to make a revolution. But Ron reminded him that this was their job and Ron would still continue this investigation to the next step. Then Flip had to accept it half-heartedly. Afterwards, Ron called the Ku Klux Klan's head office. Unexpectedly, Ron talked with a guy named David Duke. He is the main leader of this organization. Ron was asking about his membership card that had not been sent, while he wanted to join the burning of the cross, which they would do in the near future. Because Ron was good at complimenting David, David himself will make sure that Ron's membership card will be sent immediately. When Ron was about to meet Flip, Ron was bullied by a police named Lenders. Flip said that he's been a bad cop for a long time. He even shot a black child to death once. Hearing that makes Ron feel that Lenders is the one who stopped Patrice's car when she was with Quamacher that night. That day, Flip was shooting practice with the organization members. At that time, Flip realized that there were two new people that he didn't know. Unfortunately, when he tried to ask Walter, Walter said that he couldn't inform him. But the most important thing is Flip got their trust, especially Felix. After they were gone, then Ron appeared to take pictures of their former activities. His heart also hurt when knowing that the object which they shot is an embodiment of black people. Meanwhile, Ron was still trying to get closer to Patrice. They get to know each other more and more, but Ron is Ron. Ron also doesn't agree when hearing Patrice call the police by a pig in a blue uniform.
Are you a pig?
No.
Ron said, not all police officers act like pigs. Other times when they hang out together, Ron had once asked what if a police had tried to change the system from the inside. But Patrice thinks it will be difficult, because the system itself is racist already. But Ron said that they must not despair like that. When they returned to Ron's apartment, unexpectedly Ron had a guest, which was Felix. Seeing Negroes inside, he apologized because it seems wrong address. But unfortunately, Felix saw Patrice there. Flip, who hadn't known about it yet, came to Walter's house to play poker. Unexpectedly, he must be ready to be asked by Felix because of Felix's findings. Eventually, Felix checked on the Yellow Pages book and he got Ron Stallworth's address. Luckily, Flip could handle that quickly and managed to dispel their suspicion. At the police office, Ron was briefing with Flip to discuss their investigation progress. Eventually, the Ku Klux Klan is not a random organization. The agenda is neat and clear, even handled by the government like David Duke and 2 former armies who trained them when they practiced shooting. Afterwards, Ron showed the organization's membership card that they already got. It means that with the card, Flip could join the cross burning that the organization will hold. The revival of the Ku Klux Klan organization, or called as KKK, is already spreading in the black community. This news surely will be troubling news. Those who don't know yet still think that the KKK is backed up by the police. At night when the cross burning, Ron asked the police to pretend to patrol past Ivan's car and Flip, who was waiting. Luckily, their way worked. On the night, they canceled the cross burning event because they knew there were many police officers who were patrolling. One morning, Felix started to spy Patrice's movement from her house. Felix surely began to learn the movement of the black activists. Meanwhile, Ron and David Duke often talk on the phone. It makes David know Ron better. Even David feels that Ron got the same vision as his. The other day, Walter called Ron and told him that they need a new leader for the KKK in Colorado, and Walter recommended Ron over Felix because Felix loses control more often while Ron is considered good at talking and he could show the leader quality. Hearing that, Ron said that he would consider it because at the moment his father was sick and he couldn't handle 2 things at the same time. Long story short, in one night, Walter told his member that he wanted Ron to take his position. Surely, it immediately got a protest from Felix. Flip tried to refuse and recommended someone who is always there for the organization because at the moment his father is sick. One day, Felix invited his member to his house without telling Walter. In his garage, he showed the gun that will be used to welcome Duke since Duke will come to Colorado a week later. As usual, Flip had to play nice so that Felix still believed him. One day, Ron got a message on his desk. Eventually, he was asked to meet someone in a secret place. In the meeting, Ron got information about 2 armies in the organization along with their real names. They are Harry and Kevin, who work in the Defense Command of the US. This guy said, because of the investigation that Ron did, it made them do an internal investigation and they found that there was a missing phosphorus bomb. They suspected that the bomb was stolen to be used in the attack. Because of it, this guy asked Ron to continue the investigation. Because it is unknown when the attack will be done, Ron warned Patrice of the possibility of an attack that the KKK might do. Because Patrice didn't believe it, finally Ron had to tell the truth that he was a detective who was undercover to investigate the KKK. Hearing that Ron is a police officer made Patrice angry and disappointed with Ron, because Ron didn't just lie, but also Patrice didn't trust the police. At the office, Flip, who heard it, thought Ron had crossed the line because this is an investigation and not about romance. But Flip also reminded Ron that maybe Patrice was the target of the attack because Patrice was an activist who mobilized the students. One day, Felix called Ron to inform that they would cancel their planned attack. Ron and Flip still didn't know why because Felix didn't tell it on the phone. When they were talking, Chief Bridge and Lenders got into the room. Chief gave special duty to Ron to escort David Duke because there was a death threat for him. Surely Ron couldn't take the duty, because it seems like he looks for his own death. Besides that, Ron and David also have often talked on the phone. Ron was afraid if David noticed his voice. But the chief still asked him to do it because Ron admitted that he could talk in 2 different accents. On that occasion, Lander tried to provoke Ron so that the situation turned into chaos. Meanwhile, in Felix's place, a phosphorus bomb was handed by Walker to Connie, Felix's wife. Connie would be the one to plant the bomb at the protest site. As the wife of a crazy guy like Felix, she gladly accepted the duty. It was planned that the bomb would be placed when Patrice held an activity. If it couldn't be done, then the plan B is the bomb will be placed in Patrice's house. Day after day, finally Ron came to meet David Duke and introduced himself as the detective assigned to secure David Duke from the death threat. Surely, Ron's presence was considered as a fly that disturbs the view. But Ron said that he would be professional although he doesn't agree with David Duke's political view. Then the party went to the rendezvous. When Walter just got there, he introduced Flip, who still posed as Ron, to David. Finally, David could directly meet Ron, who often talks to him on the phone. He didn't realize that the real Ron is the one who got into the room bravely as the only black people who are in the white people crowd who hate him. David Duke invited his members to celebrate white supremacy. He said that white race was a genetically proven superior race. David Duke and his members gathered at an altar. They wore their special uniform. David inducted new members, including Flip, who posed as Ron. David baptized the new members there while praying for them to become true whites who could bring greatness to America. After that, David invited other members to enter the altar and asked them to welcome their brethren. Meanwhile, in a different place, Patrice held an activity that invited an old guy who is a witness of a horrible incident that happened in Texas in 1916. This guy told the audience about his friend named Jesse Washington. Jesse is a mentally retarded guy that was suspected raping a white woman. Jesse, who was already at the trial at that time, was directly found guilty by a white jury group, which was not more than 5 minutes. When leaving the courthouse, the crowd caught Jesse, chained his neck, and stabbed and even beaten, and his genitals were cut. The police officers and the officials who were there just did nothing and watched Jesse's fingers being cut and his body doused in kerosene. Then they lit a bonfire and burned Jesse alive over and over again. The incident was captured by the mayor's photographer, and it turned out the pictures of it were used as postcards. Jesse's body was then stuffed into a body bag and dragged along the way. White people gathered like it was Independence Day. Even schools let their students came out to see the incident. One of their reasons to do it to Jesse is because of a movie titled The Bird of a Nation that was released in the previous year. The movie that made the Ku Klux Klan reborn, the same movie which was watched by David Duke and the organization's members in their event. The racism movie that narrows the mindset of those who watch it, the movie that indirectly promotes the white supremacist movement like the Ku Klux Klan. When in the informal event, Walker realized that Flip came in the event. Unexpectedly, Walker recognized Flip. Then Walker told Felix that the real name of Ron that was in front of them is Flip, a police officer who once put him in jail because of armed robbery. Walker also said that Flip was a Jewish. Hearing the fact, surely it made Felix furious. He also guessed that the real Ron Stallworth was the police assigned to escort David Duke. But Felix didn't want to rush to tell this information to David Duke. Meanwhile, Ron bravely asked for a group photo with David. An honor for Ron could be David's personal bodyguard on that day. He asked Flip to take the picture, but on the count of 3, Ron dared to touch David and it made the condition chaos. Luckily, Ron could solve this by saying that it is an offense to attack a member of the police force. After that, Ron realized that Walker and Felix seemed to start their plan, so that Ron left the room and reported to the federal to watch Connie's car. Meanwhile, the tension began to occur on the dining table when Felix said that maybe Flip knew Walker. At that time, Felix had been outspoken about calling Flip by his real name, not Ron anymore. Luckily, the tension stopped when Felix had to take a call from outside. It was Connie who called him because she couldn't do the plan A because there were many police officers around. Then Felix asked her to calm down and asked her to do plan B. Afterwards, Felix directly asked Walter and Ivan to leave. Seeing that, Flip also excused himself to go to the toilet. Then Connie arrived at Patrice's house to do plan B. Connie tried to put the bomb in Patrice's mailbox, but fortunately, the box was too small. At the same time, Patrice arrived at her house. The panicked Connie then chose to get out of her house and put the bomb under Patrice's car. Not so long after that, Ron also arrived there and directly chased the panicked Connie, and he made it to catch her. Afterwards, the police officers came and thought that Ron attacked Connie. Even Connie said that Ron tried to rape her. Although Ron said that he was an undercover police officer, but this police officer even beat Ron. After that, Felix just arrived there. His car stopped beside Patrice's car. So when Felix pressed the detonator, he exploded along with Patrice's car. Connie, who saw it, was crying, and Flip finally arrived at the right time so that he could explain that Ron was a police officer. One night, Ron and Patrice, who were enjoying at a bar, were disturbed by lenders. Lenders disturbed them and then insulted them as black people. Lenders said it was his prerogative to insult black people and no legal remedy that could stop him. Unexpectedly, it turned out that Lenders was tricked into admitting his own mistake. Afterwards, he was arrested for police brutality and sexual harassment. The 4 of them then celebrated their success. Because of their success in preventing the split and also success in tricking Lenders, Ron became popular at his office. At that time, Sergeant Trapp summoned all of them for a meeting with Chief Bridge. At first, the chief congratulated them. But unluckily, this conversation was followed by bad news. Their Ku Klux Klan investigation would be closed because there was a budget cut. Even Ron was told to destroy all evidences and cut contact with organization members because according to Chief Bridge, there was no threat anymore after that incident. Hearing that, Flip and Jimmy got out of the room directly, so did Ron. Surely it made Ron disappointed. At that time, the telephone was ringing but Ron chose not to pick it up. But before leaving, he changed his mind. He picked the phone, which turned out to be David Duke. David, who did not know yet about the investigation's truth, talked about misfortune that befell their organization member. Yet because this was the last time, Ron revealed his identity to David that the real name of Negro detective who escorted him yesterday is Ron Stallworth. David Duke was silent and did not move to know the fact that a black people could infiltrate into his own organization.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
That nigger detective, get his name?
No.
You sure you don't know who he is? Cause that nigger is Ron Stallworth, you racist
At night, there was someone who knocked on Ron's apartment door. It got Ron and Patrice out to be on guard. Eventually from the window there was a big cross which was burned. It means the Ku Klux Klan organization was still running and growing. The peak is in 2017, a march named Unite the Ride which was pioneered by the KKK happened in Virginia, U.S. This white supremacist movement got protests from other citizens which caused uncontrollable clashes. Even this act killed one woman named Heather Heyer because of the blind attack by car which crashed into the protest participants by purpose. This movie ended with the upside-down American flag and the colors turned into black and white as a sign that racial issue between white supremacy and black civil rights struggle is still happening until now.